Hey guys, the Rick here, bringing you another video. Now today's topic is how to prevent from getting algae in your tank. Now I have a few tips on how to prevent from getting algae in your tank. The first one is, let's say you're running your lights for about 8 hours and you're noticing a lot of algae. I would recommend reducing that to about an hour less. So run it for about 7 hours and see how it goes. Other tips I recommend is don't overfeed your fish. Do a little bit more water changes every week. Get yourself a badass team of algae eaters. And lastly, just get more plants in the tank. The plants will help outcompete the algae for the nutrients in the tank and end up reducing the algae that's in the tank overall. Those are just some of my tips on how to prevent algae from getting in your tank. Let's find out what my friends in the fish tank community have to say about this topic.
There's a couple ways or key points that I think that is very important in terms of algae control and for people that do experience algae. The very first thing is maintenance. I think that if you keep up your maintenance, algae should be very minimal. I mean, you'll always have algae, of course. That maintenance consists of water changes, so make sure you're doing your weekly water changes. If you can't do weekly, you know, bi-weekly, but with bi-weekly, maybe do a bigger water change, like greater than 50%. Usually with me, for my tanks, I do 50% weekly, and it's been working very well. Watch your feeding. So if you do feed, power feed, or have a lot of fish that has a lot of waste, upkeep it. Make sure you're doing your water changes and keeping the water healthy and clean. And that kind of falls under with over fertilizing and just keeping your fertilized schedule good. Just don't over fertilize. It's kind of the same thing with overfeeding. The second thing is lighting. Lighting, people, this can be kind of a hot topic, I guess. I found that for beginners or anybody, start with 7 hours. Start with 7 hours and dial up and down from there. Generally with planted tanks, 7 hours is pretty good for any tank. If you have a lower tech tank with Java ferns, Anubias, you may want to dial it down to 6 or even lower because they don't need as much light. Medium to high tech plants, they might need 7, maybe a little bit more, like 8. It totally depends, but start with 7 and get a timer and just set it and adjust from there. Don't adjust right away, just wait a couple weeks. If you start to see a little bit more algae, cut it down a little bit. So that's the second tip. The third tip is get an A team. By that I mean have an algae eating team. So for all my tanks, I always have 3 species. Some sort of pleco. I recommend bushy-nosed pleco. Nerites, the snails, they do very well with eating certain types of algae that plecos can't eat. And then the third one is SAEs. They tend to eat other algae that the other 2 can't eat. And those 3, and also shrimp. Shrimp will be good, but depending on what kind of fish you have, you may not be able to keep shrimp. But Amano shrimps, for example, are very good. The fourth thing that I like to touch is flow. So you got to make sure your tank has pretty good flow. Some species of algae will grow very well in stagnant water or where things won't, move. So make sure you have a pretty good filter that's pushing water pretty well throughout the tank. If not, get a wave maker. Number 5, if you still have issues, add more plants. Just throw in some floaters, throw in some duckweed, throw in more stem plants. Basically, have more plants to outcompete the light and the nutrients in your tank so that algae can't grow. And so I think those are a few tips that will definitely help you guys control algae and keep your tank less green.
Hey folks, Nick Mock 007, and since you asked, yes, I made the trip to Hawaii just to make this video and hang out with the Rick. And today he's asked me to give you some of my tips on preventing algae. And to sum it up, I use the IAATLS method. Oh, what's the IAATLS method? It's all about the lighting, stupid. No, just kidding. But in the planted tank, there's always algae, and anyone who tells you differently is just plain lying. But to keep algae at bay, you need to keep balance in your tank. And, well, that's what everyone says anyways, but what does that actually mean? To me, it means providing optimal conditions to promote plant growth, and consequently, that means keeping conditions that promote algae to a minimum. So yes, you need a good substrate, yes, you need adequate nutrients, and yes, you need a carbon source, but Those things are easy. Getting the lighting right is the hardest. You need to pick a type, say T5 or LED, then you need to understand PAR and Kelvin spectrum, then you need to decide how long to leave it on, and okay, I don't have time to sort through all of that today, but my best advice is to make light the growth limiting factor, and by that I mean start with a short photo period, and then increase it slowly, week by week, or even slower than that, until you see the first signs of algae popping up, then back down. Simple as that.
There are a few steps that I take to prevent algae from growing in my aquariums. The first one is I wash my plants. So as soon as I get some new plants from my local fish store, online, friends, wherever I get them, I take them home and I wash them at least in tap water or aquarium water. You can also do a bleach dip if you want to do that. That's part bleach, part water. If you're unfamiliar, check it out online, and I'm sure you can find some references for that, but that will kill pretty much most of the algae that's already on the plants. It'll also help eliminate some of the snails, if there's any pest snails, or eggs and things like that. So it's really good to wash your plants just in general, just so you don't get pests in the tank and so you don't have algae coming from other people to your tank. If there's any leaves on the plants that you can see some algae, cut those leaves off and just discard them, because don't even bother saving one leaf and infecting your whole tank with algae. Like, it's just not worth it. Next thing I do is use timers on my lights. This ensures that my tanks go on and off at the same time. They get 8 to 10 hours of light depending on each setup, and when you are diligent in keeping your lights on timers and everything as similar as possible. What am I trying to say? Keep a routine. That's when you'll see less algae in your tanks accumulating. Another thing that you can do is have some fast growing plants. So fast growing plants like the val, the duckweed, hygrophila, and the anacris, they're all pretty quick growing plants, so I find having them in this tank helps to outcompete algae. So those are great to have if you have a planted tank. The big thing, and this is where you're going to be getting algae if you don't have a planted tank and you just have decorations or whatnot, is if you're overfeeding your fish. So if there's going to be extra waste just from the fish being overfed and actually pooping more, or if there's going to be extra waste because there's unfinished food rotting in your tank, those are going to contribute to an algae happening in your tank. The last thing that I would suggest doing if you are fighting algae, or if you just have a well-established tank that gets algae, is you can get some algae-eating snails or fish. This is not a good sort of band-aid solution if you just have an algae outbreak and you decide it's a great idea to go and pick up, a pleco or something, because chances are it's a new aquarium, or it's just not somewhere where it's established, and the algae is going to be around to continuously feed the pleco or whatever you're getting. Once your tank's established and you really sort of know what's going on, that's when you can start adding algae-eating fish and snails and things. I have 3 murite snails in this tank, and they pretty much take care of all the algae on the glass. I don't really have any algae-eating fish, and right now, that seems to be fine with not overfeeding my fish. So good luck with your tanks, everyone.
Alright guys, appreciate you guys watching. It's your turn. Leave it in the comments below. What have you done to help you prevent algae from getting in your tanks? Share with the rest of us. And as always, rate, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.